If your hips feel locked up, tight, or just plain stiff no matter what you do, there's a good chance you've been solving the wrong problem. Stretching gives you temporary relief because it loosens tissue, but the stiffness comes back within an hour because nothing about the underlying issue changed. What your hips actually need isn't more length, it's more control, and these overlooked exercises are going to give it to them. The first exercise is the 90-90 hip switch, and it'll expose something no stretch ever has. It shows you exactly which direction your hip has stopped trusting and why your body has been quietly compensating for it every single day without you noticing. Here's how you set it up. Sit on the floor with both knees bent at 90 degrees, one knee pointing forward and one pointing out to the side. Your shins should be making an L shape on the ground. From there, you rotate your hips and switch, letting both knees drop to the opposite side in one smooth motion. Forward knee goes out, outside knee comes forward, back and forth. It sounds simple. For most people, it's immediately humbling. What you'll notice is that one direction flows and the other one stops you cold. Maybe your hip hikes up to compensate. Maybe your torso collapses to one side. Maybe you can barely get halfway through the rotation before something clamps down and refuses to let you go further. That resistance isn't your muscles being tight. That's your nervous system putting up a wall around a range of motion it doesn't trust you to control. Your hips are ball and socket joints built to rotate, hinge, and shift in multiple directions. But when you spend most of your day seated, your hips live in one angle for hours at a time. Over years, the brain starts treating every other position as unfamiliar territory and limits access to it as a precaution. The 90-90 switch is how you start knocking those walls down, not by forcing your way through, but by showing your nervous system the movement repeatedly until it stops treating it like a threat. Don't be afraid to use your arms as assistants at first to go through the motion. 3 sets of 8 to 10 controlled switches per side. Most people do this drill and feel the difference immediately, but the deeper fix happens one layer out from the hip itself, in a muscle group that's been quietly failing you every time you take a step. What you're about to do looks almost embarrassingly simple. You'll probably see it and think it can't possibly be the thing that's been missing, but the muscle group this exercise targets is directly responsible for whether your hip feels stable enough to move freely or whether it stays locked down in self-protection mode. Grab a resistance band and place it just above your knees or around your ankles. Stand with your feet about hip-width apart, a slight bend in your knees, and your weight distributed evenly across both feet. From there, step sideways while keeping constant tension in the band, your chest upright, and your knees tracking over your toes rather than caving inward. 10 to 15 steps in one direction, then back. That's one set. What you're training are the hip abductors and external rotators, the muscles that run along the outside of your hip and control how stable your pelvis is when you're on one leg. Every time you walk, climb stairs, get out of a chair, or change direction, your body is transferring weight through one hip at a time. Those muscles are supposed to manage that transfer. When they're weak, the body can't stabilize the hip through strength, so it does the next best thing. It tightens everything around the joint to create stability through compression instead. Think about that for a second. The stiffness you've been trying to stretch away might not be your hips holding tension. It might be your hips holding themselves together because the muscles responsible for that job stopped pulling their weight. Stretching loosens the compression temporarily, but the moment you stand up and put load through that hip again, the body goes right back to what it knows. The band walk starts building the actual capacity your hips need to feel safe letting go. 3 sets, 15 steps each direction. Keep the movement controlled and resist the urge to rush through it. The slower and more deliberate you are, the more you're actually training the right thing. There's 3 more moves coming up that will have your hips feeling the best they have in years. But if you're already starting to see the value in this type of exercise approach, then you'll want to hear about this. Most programs ignore mobility and stability, which is why so many people keep getting hurt, feeling stiff, or just never feeling quite right in their own body. I'm passionate about fixing this issue, so I created a blueprint called Reset Your Body. It's built around the moves and techniques that actually move the needle for long-term body function. If you want to move better, feel stronger, and actually stay in the game for the long haul, there's a QR code on screen that you can scan with your phone, or check the link in the description below the video. Here's something worth sitting with for a second. Every single step you take asks your hip to do something your gym training almost never practices. And the longer that gap exists, the more your body finds other ways to manage it, which is where a whole category of stiffness comes from that stretching will never touch. Lie on your back with your feet flat on the floor, knees bent, and heels roughly under your knees. Drive through both heels and lift your hips up until your body forms a straight line from your knees to your shoulders. At the top, shift your hips laterally just a few inches to one side, hold for a breath, come back to center, shift to the other side, come back to center, then lower down. That's 1 rep. That lateral shift is doing something that almost no other exercise in a standard routine addresses. Every time you take a step, your pelvis has to shift over one leg, while the hip on the other side controls the descent. It's a transfer that happens thousands of times a day, and if the muscles controlling it are weak, the body braces the hip to compensate. That bracing is what stiffness feels like from the inside. Not damage, not tightness in the traditional sense. Just a body holding a position it doesn't have the strength to move through confidently. This exercise loads that exact pattern in a controlled environment. You're training your hips to manage lateral weight transfer, which is the movement they're actually supposed to be doing in real life under load every single day. 3 sets of 10 reps with 5 shifts per side at the top. Don't let your lower back arch and don't let your hips rotate when you shift. The movement should feel like a pure side-to-side slide, not a twist. This next exercise has nothing to do with your hips on the surface. That's not a mistake. The reason your hips are guarding in the first place might be coming from somewhere else entirely. And if you've been working directly on the hips and not getting results, this is probably why. Lie on your back with your arms extended straight up toward the ceiling and your knees bent at 90 degrees, shins parallel to the floor. Press your lower back into the ground, not a crunch, just flat contact, and hold it there. Then slowly lower your right arm overhead toward the floor while simultaneously extending your left leg out and lowering it toward the ground. Keep your lower back pressed down the entire time. Bring both limbs back to the start and repeat on the other side. If your lower back lifts off the floor before your arm or leg reaches the ground, you've gone too far. Pull back the range and work within what you can actually control. And here's where it gets even deeper. Your hips don't operate in isolation. They share a neighborhood with your lumbar spine, and when the deep core muscles responsible for stabilizing that spine aren't doing their job, your hips pick up the slack. They tighten, they guard, they compensate for instability that was never their problem to solve in the first place. You can stretch forever without resolving it because no amount of hip flexibility changes the fact that the core isn't holding its end of the deal. The dead bug trains the deep stabilizers of your spine to take ownership of spinal position, which gradually removes the load your hips have been carrying on their behalf. When your hips don't have to protect your spine anymore, they're free to move the way they were designed to. 3 sets of 8 controlled reps per side. Go slow enough that you're feeling the deep abdominals work, not just moving your limbs through the air. Most people spend years trying to solve hip stiffness one symptom at a time. This exercise doesn't work that way. What it does is go straight to the source, which is the conversation happening between your nervous system and your hip joint, and it changes that conversation permanently if you do it consistently enough. Stand next to a wall with one hand resting on it for light balance support. Lift one knee up toward your chest, then begin rotating it outward, sweeping it wide to the side, pulling it back behind your body, then circling it back to the front and up again. One full slow orbit around the entire range of your hip joint, then reverse the direction. That's the exercise. The difference between this and stretching is the difference between being moved and choosing to move. When you stretch, something external is pushing your joint into a position. When you do hip cars, your muscles are actively driving the joint through that entire arc under your own power. You're not borrowing range of motion, you're owning it. That distinction matters more than it might seem. The brain doesn't care how far a joint can go when it's being forced there. It cares how far a joint can go when you're in control. Stiffness is largely a protection response. A governor your nervous system places on movement it doesn't fully trust yet. Hip cars are how you build that trust rep by rep. 5 to 8 rotations in each direction, both hips, every single day, not 3 times a week, every day. This is the kind of work FitZip is built around. Not the dramatic stuff, but the consistent, intentional practice that quietly changes how your body functions over months and years. If you want the full program that builds on all of this to reset your entire body, the link is in the description below.